Hey everyone. So the other day we talked about the importance of a low fasting insulin level as a marker of good overall metabolic health. So today we're going to talk about a couple techniques that you can apply to your daily life that will help lower your fasting insulin level and just in general lower your insulin level and improve your blood glucose. Okay, so number one, time-restricted feeding, also known as intermittent fasting. This is basically the concept of doing all your caloric consumption within a particular feeding window during the day. Now, a lot of the major benefits with regards to insulin and blood sugar management in terms of intermittent fasting have been done on rat and mice models. So it doesn't directly correlate, but there have been studies done on diabetic patients, even though they've been smaller studies, where they show that time-restricted feeding does in fact lower insulin levels and improve blood glucose. So I know most people are doing intermittent fasting or time-restricted feeding for fat loss, and I'm not saying this is a miracle for fat loss, but I am saying that by having long periods of the day where you are not having any caloric intake, this is going to allow for your insulin levels and blood sugars to lower. And so this is the goal for healthy metabolism. And so this is a good technique. First, at the very least, start out with eating in a 12-hour window. Most people might think they do that, but actually when studies have been done with regarding feeding windows in the average person, it's shown that people actually eat more within like a 13 or 14-hour window, which, first goal should be within a 12-hour window. And basically, start there once you're feeling comfortable with that. Basically shorten the window to about 8 or 6 hours, just depending on what your goals are. And that will significantly help lower your insulin levels. A couple things to consider, though, with regards to feeding windows and what's kind of the ideal time to eat. One, during the evening time, we tend to be a little bit more insulin resistant or not as responsive to insulin, so we're more prone to having higher blood sugars if we're eating large meals, particularly if they're high in carbohydrate in the evening time. So save your larger meals or your carb-heavy meals closer to the earlier times of the day. The other thing is, timing your carbohydrate intake very close to your workouts is a really good technique too. So, having your carb meals or your big meals either a few hours before or a few hours after your workouts, that will also significantly improve your your insulin response, and so will allow your insulin levels to stay at a much more optimal level. And also not eating so close to when you wake up. So when we wake up in the morning, our cortisol levels are at their highest, and cortisol increases your blood sugar. And so, if we eat a particularly if it's a high carbohydrate meal, then you're going to have higher levels of blood sugar and a higher spike in insulin. So you obviously work your meal timing window to when it's convenient for you, but I would keep in mind those things. Also, for better sleep, you want to avoid eating within 2 to 3 hours of bedtime. So, and that also is going to improve your insulin levels in the morning, because if you have better sleep, you're going to have better fasting insulin in the morning. And we'll get to that in one of the next steps. But so consider those tactics when you are choosing your feeding window, and definitely try to do some kind of intermittent fasting or time restricted feeding if you want to lower insulin levels. Number two, avoiding carbohydrates. Not all carbohydrates, but particularly processed or highly refined carbohydrates like sugars, flours, rice. These are things, this is where the glycemic index comes into play. So things with a high glycemic index are foods that are basically going to spike your blood sugar and then cause a resultant increased spike in insulin. A lot of this does depend on your microbiome. Some people have higher insulin responses than others to certain foods, but by and large, if you are somebody who has some insulin resistance or very high fasting insulin levels, going through a period of avoiding most processed carbohydrates and sugars would be very beneficial, and it would significantly help reduce your insulin levels. So if you are going to have carbohydrates, make sure they're in their whole food forms. Things like fruits, potatoes, starchy vegetables, they all come with fiber, and that kind of helps blunt the response to this high blood sugar, and so it will significantly help reduce the insulin spike. So that's number 2, avoiding processed carbs and sugars. Number 3, resistance training. So this is probably one of the key factors, I believe, in not only a healthy metabolism, but overall health and longevity. And the reason resistance training is so effective for metabolism is, one, it lowers your blood sugar. So think of muscle, active muscle, as a sponge for glucose. So when you ingest a meal that is high in carbohydrates, if you have active muscle, it's basically going to suck that glucose or that sugar into the muscle before insulin is needed to be secreted by the pancreas to lower the blood sugar. So not only are you lowering blood sugar, you're lowering insulin by having active muscle tissue. So this is very important because muscle does not need insulin to absorb the blood sugar. So if you want to have carbohydrates, then I strongly suggest you have active muscle tissue so that it essentially sucks that carbohydrate out of the bloodstream, where it once it accumulates and gets too high, it causes damage. So activate your muscle tissue. This is probably the best biohack that you have for healthy metabolism. Number 4, optimize your sleep and stress management. So this basically is very important when it comes to cortisol. So when we wake up in the morning, we have a cortisol spike that helps kind of wake us up, get us going, get us out of bed, get us energized. The problem comes in is if you did not sleep well the night before and your recovery is very poor, or you're stressed and that's the reason you're not sleeping well, the cortisol spike is much higher and it carries out throughout the day. And that is going to make that your blood sugar remains elevated, and as a result, your insulin is going to remain elevated. So try to optimize your sleep, optimize your stress management. I'll probably do a video regarding tips for those, but definitely make it a priority because it is significantly going to help your metabolism. Number 5, so these are some things that you can add to your daily diet that will help reduce blood sugar levels and as a result help lower insulin. One is cinnamon. So cinnamon has been shown to lower blood sugar directly. So adding cinnamon to your beverages would be a good idea, particularly if you're somebody who uses sugar in their tea or coffee. Maybe switching that out and adding cinnamon would help lower your blood sugar. Apple cider vinegar is another substance that they have studied with regards to keeping blood sugar levels low after a carbohydrate meal. So having apple cider vinegar beverages around your mealtime would be probably a benefit. Green tea in and of itself has antioxidant properties that have been shown to help lower blood sugar. And fiber, so particularly soluble fiber, which is found in whole fruits and whole starchy vegetables. This particular fiber is very good at maintaining or avoiding high blood sugar spikes with meals. So, and the reason that is the fiber essentially doesn't get digested well and doesn't get absorbed, and so when the fiber passes through the intestines kind of push it along, quickly, and so whatever comes with that fiber, you're not absorbing as good as you would if that fiber wasn't there. So, for example, let's take an orange. So if you take a whole orange and you eat that orange, there's a lot of fiber and pulp that comes along with it that is not easily digested and is not absorbed. And so all the juice from that orange, or the fructose from that orange, you're not going to absorb in the intestine, and it's not going to get into the bloodstream that easily. But if you take that orange and just squeeze it and squeeze out all the orange juice out of it, and then drink that orange juice, well, there's no fiber there. So every single last drop of that glucose or the fructose that comes from that orange, you're going to absorb that. And so the concentration of it in the blood is going to be significantly higher. So this can be really applied to any form of food when you think about it. And so this is why processed foods are so detrimental to blood glucose and insulin levels, because when you process most foods, you're removing them from their natural fibers and their natural structures. So you take flour, for example. So wheat, has a lot of fiber, but as soon as you grind it up and remove all the fiber from it and all you have is flour, basically that's just a glucose bomb to your intestine, and it's absorbed and it will spike your blood sugar. So, again, when it comes to fiber, eat whole foods. If you want to have carbohydrates, have carbohydrates in their whole food forms, like fruit and whole vegetables. This will significantly improve your blood sugar levels, and as a result will improve your fasting insulin levels, which, like I said previously, is a marker that we all should be looking at to make sure is optimal, because that is a true sign of good metabolism. And good metabolism is, essential for overall health. So yeah, that's it. Let me know what you guys think, and hopefully you guys enjoyed it, and hopefully this helps you guys. Thanks.